The council chamber of Unity Prime stretched 500 meters in every direction. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in the center of the Judgment Circle. A small human figure surrounded by representatives from 300 alien civilizations. The chamber floated in deep space, anchored to nothing. A symbol of the Galactic Council's power over all known worlds. Above Marcus, the High Arbiter Thelvin hovered in crystalline form. The alien being pulsed with deep red light that meant anger in every language the galaxy understood. Around the chamber, tier after tier of seats rose toward the dome ceiling. Creatures of every imaginable shape watched the human below. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others floated in containment fields filled with methane or liquid ammonia. A few existed as pure energy, visible only as glowing patterns in the air. This was the heart of galactic power. This was where civilizations lived or died based on a single vote. Marcus knew he was supposed to feel small here, supposed to feel afraid. The Council had designed this chamber specifically to make accused species understand their insignificance. For 10,000 years, it had worked perfectly, but Marcus was smiling. That smile made several delegates shift nervously in their seats. Humans had only joined the galactic community 200 years ago. They were supposed to be humble, grateful, obedient. They were not supposed to smile when facing extinction. The species called humanity stands accused of 15 violations of the Galactic Compact, Thelvin announced. The words echoed through translation systems built into every wall. You have developed forbidden weapons. You have militarized your star system. You have refused our inspection team's access to your facilities. You have rejected the authority of this council to govern your actions. Marcus let the words hang in the air for a moment. Then he spoke in a calm, quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the massive chamber. We reject the charges, High Arbiter, but more importantly, we reject the right of this council to pass judgment on us. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in 100 different languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the chaos. Several species activated their personal shields, expecting violence. Thelvin's crystalline body flashed so bright that Marcus had to shield his eyes. Silence. The word crashed through the chamber like a physical force. The delegates obeyed instantly. You dare deny our authority? Thelvin demanded. We who have maintained peace for 100 centuries, we who unite thousands of worlds under a single law. I deny nothing, Marcus replied. I simply state a fact. This is not a trial. This is theater. You decided our fate 3 months ago when you assembled your war fleets around our solar system. More chaos. Marcus had just revealed he knew about the Council's secret military preparations. That should have been impossible. The planning had taken place on secure channels that humanity supposedly could not access. Delegate Zivkor, representing the hegemony of 6 suns, rose from his seat. The insectoid being's wings buzzed with agitation. You admit to espionage as well? Your crimes multiply with every word. Marcus turned to face Zivkor directly. I admit to being observant. Your 17 Empire Alliance has positioned 2,000 warships around Earth. Your trade embargo began 6 months ago. Your propaganda networks have spent a full year calling humanity a threat to galactic peace. None of this required espionage, Delegate. It only required paying attention. Admiral Greckener's hologram appeared in the chamber. The military commander of the Krith Dominion was broadcasting from his flagship somewhere in deep space. You understand that resistance is pointless? That your entire species will be eliminated if you continue this defiance? I understand that you believe you have already won, Marcus said. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly. Every weapon system in the chamber locked onto him instantly. Energy readings spiked. Shields activated across the room. Marcus pulled out a small data storage device. I have something you need to see, he told Thelvin. 60 seconds of video. After you watch it, we can continue this discussion. Or we can start being honest with each other about what is really happening here. Thelvin's crystalline form shifted through several colors. Protocol required examining all evidence, even from the accused. Show it, the High Arbiter commanded. The chamber's central holographic projector activated. Every delegate leaned forward to watch. The video showed Earth's moon in crisp detail. Then the view pulled back to show Mars, then Jupiter, then the entire solar system. And that was when the delegates began to notice something wrong. Every asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter had been moved. Every comet in the outer system had been repositioned. Every piece of space debris larger than a shuttle had been carefully placed into geometric patterns that covered billions of kilometers. The entire solar system had been transformed into a massive geometric design. But it was not art. It was not decoration. It was a weapon. Impossible, someone whispered. The words spread through the chamber in a dozen languages. We have been watching your system for 2 centuries, Thelvin said. The High Arbiter's voice had lost some of its certainty. We would have detected such massive construction efforts. You detected what we wanted you to detect, Marcus replied. For 200 years, you have watched us. You have monitored our communications. You have tracked our ships. You have analyzed our energy signatures. And the entire time we have been preparing, moving asteroids one at a time, building weapons in the shadows of gas giants, creating defenses you never imagined possible. The video ended. The chamber fell completely silent. Marcus continued speaking into that silence. You brought us here to pass judgment, to make an example of humanity for daring to defend ourselves. But I have a question for all of you. If we could reorganize our entire star system without you noticing, what else have we done that you cannot see? Thelvin's form shifted to a color the translators could not identify. Fear, perhaps, or uncertainty. This council sentences humanity to Category 5 quarantine, the High Arbiter declared. But the words lacked conviction now. Your home system will be sterilized. Your colonies will be absorbed. Your species will serve as a warning to all who defy galactic law. Marcus checked his watch. An old mechanical timepiece that suddenly seemed ominous in a chamber full of advanced technology. Too late, he said quietly. Your fleets are already compromised. What do you mean? Admiral Greckiner demanded. I mean, contact with your second armada was lost approximately 30 seconds ago. Your third fleet will follow in another minute. By the time this meeting ends, every warship you positioned around Earth will be dark and silent. Alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Technicians rushed to their stations. Delegates shouted for information. And on the holographic displays that showed tactical positions across the galaxy, red warning indicators began appearing. One by one, entire fleets went dark. Communications ceased. Weapon systems failed. Propulsion stopped working. The Council's military forces were being systematically disabled. Impossible, Thelvin repeated, but the evidence was undeniable. Marcus walked slowly around the judgment circle. For 200 years, every piece of technology you sold us came with your standardized systems. Every treaty you made us sign required using your approved equipment. Every firmware update you insisted we install for compatibility. We accepted it all. We integrated it all. And we modified it all. Understanding crashed over the chamber like a wave. The humans had not just prepared weapons. They had compromised every system in the galactic military infrastructure. This is an act of war, Zivkor shouted. No, Marcus corrected. This is self-defense. You brought war to us. We simply prepared for it better than you imagined possible. Outside the chamber's viewports, the first human ships began appearing. They emerged from quantum space in formations that surrounded Unity Prime completely. Hundreds of vessels, and thousands. But they were not coming from Earth's direction. They were coming from everywhere at once. From systems the Council had never explored. From regions of space marked as uninhabitable. From the dark spaces between the stars, humanity had not built one fleet. They had built dozens. Marcus stood in the center of the judgment circle and spoke into the horrified silence. He said softly, "Shall we discuss new terms?" Director Victoria Cross stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains. Holographic displays surrounded her, showing real-time tactical data from across the galaxy. Each screen told the same story. The Council had underestimated humanity. Badly. Status report, she ordered. Commander Phillips worked his console rapidly. All primary objectives achieved, Director. Council fleets around Earth are completely disabled. Our ships are in position around 73 different strategic locations. Economic disruption protocols are active. Trade routes are shifting to bypass Council checkpoints. Victoria nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan. A plan that had taken over a century to prepare. Open a channel to Unity Prime, she commanded. High priority. Route it directly to High Arbiter Thelvin. Communications officer worked quickly. Within seconds, Thelvin's crystalline form appeared in holographic detail. Behind the High Arbiter, Victoria could see the chaos of the council chamber. Delegates were arguing. Alarms were sounding. The orderly authority of galactic government was fracturing before her eyes. High Arbiter, Victoria greeted formally. I am Director Victoria Cross, Earth Defense Command. We have not been formally introduced, Director Cross. Thelvin's colors shifted through patterns that suggested barely controlled panic. You are responsible for this attack on galactic peace? I am responsible for defending my species from genocide, Victoria corrected. Your fleets came to destroy us. We simply made sure they could not. She gestured, and the holographic displays changed. New tactical data appeared, far more detailed than anything the Council's own sensors could provide. Victoria was showing them everything. Every human ship. Every defensive position. Every weapon platform hidden in dark space. I am sharing this data because I want complete honesty between us, Victoria explained. No more hiding. No more deception. This is what humanity has built while you watched us. This is why attacking us would be suicide. Admiral Greckener's hologram appeared beside Thelvin. You show us your forces to intimidate us. I show you our forces so you understand reality, Victoria replied. Admiral, your weapon systems are locked. Your shields are down. Your communications are compromised. If you give the order to attack, you will die. Your crews will die. Your fleets will become debris fields. Is that what you want? Silence from the Admiral, Victoria continued. But military defeat is only part of your problem. Pull up your economic data from the past 72 hours. You could see Thelvin gesture to someone off-screen. A moment later, the High Arbiter's colors shifted to something the translators rendered as shock. Trade volume through human space has increased by 47%, Thelvin said slowly. Independent merchants are bypassing council tariffs. New routes are opening that we do not control. Because we do not charge tariffs, Victoria explained. Human space is open to anyone who wants to trade. No fees, no licenses, no bureaucracy. Just honest commerce. And people are responding. The merchant houses, the free traders, the independent colonies, they are all rushing to establish routes through our territory because it is simply more profitable. Elegant appeared in the transmission. You are creating economic chaos. We are creating competition, Victoria countered. Your monopoly on galactic trade is ending. Within a year, half the galaxy's commerce will flow through human-controlled space. Within 5 years, your economic power will be so diminished that your military threats will be meaningless. You will not be able to afford your fleets anymore. This is conquest by economics, Admiral Greckener protested. It is still warfare. It is capitalism, Victoria said calmly. You cannot fight it with warships, Admiral. You can only compete. And right now, you are not competitive. The implications were sinking in. The Council faced not just military defeat, but economic collapse. Humanity had attacked on multiple fronts simultaneously. Thelvin's form dimmed. What do you want from us? A new agreement, Victoria replied. The Council remains as an advisory body, a forum for resolving disputes, a coordinator for mutual defense against external threats. But you do not dictate terms to sovereign species anymore. You do not quarantine civilizations for developing technologies you dislike. You do not impose your will through military force. And if we refuse... Victoria's expression hardened. Then, in 6 hours, our fleet moves. Not to attack, but to occupy. Your military installations become neutral territory supervised by a coalition of human and non-council forces. Your ability to wage war ends permanently. That is an invasion. Zivkor shouted. That is checkmate, Victoria said quietly. We are giving you the option to surrender with dignity, to remain relevant by becoming partners instead of rulers, or you can fight, and we will remove you from power entirely. Your choice. You have 6 hours. She ended the transmission before anyone could respond. Commander Phillips looked at her with newfound respect. You gave them an impossible choice. I gave them the only choice that matters, Victoria replied. Adapt or die. The same choice every civilization eventually faces. Oh. New data appeared on the tactical displays. Ships were moving. Not human ships. Other vessels from across the galaxy? Identification on those contacts? Victoria asked. Free Traders Coalition, Phillips reported. Merchant Houses of Kelver. Peripheral Worlds Alliance. They are all broadcasting messages of support for humanity. One by one, 47 different factions declared their positions. They had been waiting to see how the Council would handle the upstart humans. The Council's decision to commit genocide had been the final proof these groups needed. The old order was corrupt, brutal, unsustainable. It was time for something. Victoria watched the declarations come in with satisfaction. This was the other part of the plan. The part that did not rely on military force. Humanity had spent decades building relationships with the species the Council ignored or exploited. Trade agreements. Cultural exchanges. Mutual defense pacts. They had created an alternative power structure. And now, it was activating. Message from Unity Prime, the communications officer announced. Hi, Arbiter. Thelbin requests another conversation. Already? Philip sounded surprised. They still have 5 hours. Victoria smiled slightly. They are smart enough to recognize when they have lost. Put the High Arbiter through. Thelvin appeared again. This time, the High Arbiter was alone in a private chamber. No delegates. No witnesses. Director Cross, Thelvin began. We need to discuss terms. I already gave you our terms. I mean realistic terms. Terms that allow the Council to survive with some measure of authority intact? You cannot expect us to simply dissolve 10,000 years of governance? Victoria considered that. What are you offering? A transition period. 10 years where the Council maintains its structure, but accepts oversight from human and non-Council representatives. During that time, we prove we can work together. If successful, we formalize a new compact. If not, we negotiate dissolution. It was more than Victoria had expected. She had anticipated complete resistance. The fact that Thelvin was already proposing compromise meant the situation was even worse for the Council than she had realized. I will present your proposal to Earth's government, Victoria said. But understand this, High Arbiter. We will not accept token reforms. The changes must be real, meaningful, permanent. They will be, Thelvin promised. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Not just for the Council, but for the galaxy. If the old order collapses completely, the chaos will consume millions of worlds. We need structure. We need governance. We simply need better governance than what we have had. Victoria could hear the exhaustion in Thelvin's translated voice. The High Arbiter had spent the past hours watching everything built over millennia crack and crumble. That would break anyone. We want peace, Arbiter, Victoria said more gently. But peace requires mutual respect. The old Council demanded obedience. The new Council must earn cooperation. I understand, Thelvin replied. Begin preparing your transition teams. We will coordinate the details. Transmission ended. Phillips let out a breath he had been holding. We did it. We actually did it. We survived the first phase, Victoria corrected. Now comes the hard part. Building something better to replace what we tore down. Victoria's moment of satisfaction evaporated. What now? Phillips checked his displays. His expression went grim. The hardliners. The delegates who voted against negotiation. They are mobilizing their reserve fleets. 8,000 ships. Ancient designs that predate standardization. Immune to our hacking, Victoria finished. Destination: Earth. Victoria straightened. Sound General Quarters. Recall 3rd and 5th Fleets. Position them between the Hardliners and Sol System. Rules of engagement are weapons free if they cross the boundary line. That will start a shooting war.
Ow.
Victoria said firmly. That will end one. Some people only learn through defeat. We are about to teach them. The Hardliner Coalition fleet assembled in the outer reaches, far from Council monitoring. Admiral Greckener commanded from his ancient dreadnought. A vessel built 3,000 years ago, when warfare was simple and brutal. Around him, 8,000 ships gathered. Each one pulled from secret reserves. Each one crewed by species who refused to accept the new order. Status of all vessels, Greckener demanded. His tactical officer worked ancient control systems that had not been used in centuries. All ships report ready, Admiral. Weapons charged. Course plotted for Earth. Greckener studied the tactical displays. His fleet was massive by historical standards. But intelligence suggested humanity had deployed over 40,000 ships across the galaxy. The numbers were against him, but numbers were not everything. These human vessels rely on advanced technology, Greckener addressed his crew. Complex systems. Sophisticated networks. Our ships are simple, crude by modern standards, but that makes them immune to the tricks humanity used to disable the Council fleets. The crew responded with enthusiastic sounds in a dozen different languages. They believed in their admiral, believed in their mission, believed that the old ways were superior to this new chaos humanity had created. Greckener ordered, maximum speed. We will destroy their homeworld before they can organize a proper defense. The fleet jumped too faster than light travel. Destination: humanity's birthplace. Mission: genocide back at Unity Prime. Ambassador Martzu. Sweb watched the Hardliner fleet depart on long-range sensors. He stood in an observation room overlooking the council chamber, alone, thinking his neural implant chimed with an incoming message from Victoria Cross. Marcus, the Hardliners are moving. 8,000 ships inbound to Earth. We are positioning our fleets to intercept. Can we stop them without destroying them? Marcus asked. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Possibly, but it will risk human lives. These ships are old enough that our weapons may need to use full power to penetrate their armor. If we hold back, we might lose. Marcus understood the subtext. Victoria was asking permission to do whatever was necessary. To kill, if killing became unavoidable? Do what you must, Marcus said quietly, but try to disable them first. If we slaughter 8,000 ships, we prove their fears correct. We become the threat they claim we are. Understood. Cross out. The connection ended. Marcus remained at the window, watching alien delegates filter back into the chamber below. They were preparing for an emergency session. Trying to determine how to respond to the Hardliner attack, Thelvin appeared beside Marcus. The High Arbiter's crystalline form had settled into a dull gray color that suggested resignation. Your forces will destroy them, Thelvin said. Not a question. If necessary, Marcus confirmed. But we will offer them the chance to surrender first. They will not accept. These are true believers. Species who genuinely think the old ways were better. They will fight to the death. Marcus nodded. Then they will die. And the galaxy will learn what happens when you threaten humanity. You sound regretful. I am, Marcus admitted. Every death is a failure of diplomacy, a sign that words were not enough. I became an ambassador because I believe problems should be solved through conversation, not violence. Yet you prepared for violence anyway. Because believing in peace does not make you immune to war, Marcus replied. We tried talking for 200 years. We followed your rules. We paid your taxes. We contributed to galactic society, and you still decided we should die. What choice did that leave us? Thelvin's color shifted to something softer. Sadness, perhaps. None, you are correct. We left you no choice but preparation. I simply wonder if there was a moment when different decisions could have prevented this. There were many moments, Marcus said. Every time the Council dismissed a smaller species, every time you imposed rules without consent, every time you used force instead of negotiation, each moment was an opportunity to be better. You chose not to take them. Below them, the Council session was beginning. Delegates were arguing about how to respond to the hardliner attack. Some wanted to support Greckener. Others wanted to condemn him. Most seemed paralyzed by indecision. Your council is fracturing, Marcus observed. Yes, Thelvin agreed. Without unity, we have no authority. Without authority, we cannot govern. The old order is dying, Ambassador. The only question is what replaces it. Marcus turned to face the High Arbiter directly. Something better. Something that serves instead of rules. Something that earns loyalty instead of demanding it. That is what we are offering. And if we cannot build that together, then we will build it without you, Marcus said simply. Humanity does not need the Council's permission to create a better galaxy. We would simply prefer to have you as partners in the effort. Thelvin pulsed through several colors. I will try to convince the other delegates. To make them see reason, but I cannot promise success. I am not asking for promises, Marcus replied. Just effort. The rest will determine itself. Halfway across the galaxy, the hardliner fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Greckener expected to see a desperate defense. Scattered human ships trying to protect their homeworld. Instead, he found something that made his tactical officer gasp. Human vessels were arranged in a perfect, geometric wall across millions of kilometers of space. Thousands of ships, positioned with mathematical precision, creating a barrier between the hardliner fleet and Earth. They are outnumbered, Greckener said. Our 8,000 against perhaps 2,000 of theirs. They cannot stop us. But his tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. Admiral, those ships are not armed with conventional weapons. The energy signatures are wrong. They are generating power levels that should not be possible. Explain. They're harvesting vacuum energy. Matter and antimatter creation using zero-point extraction. If they fire those weapons, the energy release would be equivalent to a supernova. Greckener stared at the readings. They would destroy their own star system. They would destroy everything within 100 light-years. A transmission cut through the bridge. Director Victoria Cross appeared on every screen. Admiral Greckener, she said calmly, you are looking at the absolute line, the final defense of Earth. Cross that line, and we release weapons that will erase your fleet from existence. You will not leave debris. You will simply cease to exist. Greckener found his voice. You are bluffing. You would not destroy Earth. Earth is shielded, Victoria replied. The energy releases are directional. Your fleet would be annihilated. Our planet would be safe. The question is whether you believe me enough to test it. She leaned forward. You came here to commit genocide, Admiral. To sterilize our world. Do you really think we will not respond with overwhelming force? Do you believe we built all of this just to surrender at the final moment? Greckener looked at his sensor readings. The energy signatures were real. The weapons were functional. If the humans fired, his fleet would be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to retreat, Victoria said. After that, we demonstrate why humanity deserves to exist. Choose carefully, Admiral. The countdown began. Greckener watched the numbers decrease. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Some looked defiant. Others looked terrified. All looked to him for leadership. 30 seconds remaining, Greckener thought about his species. His homeworld. The families of his crew members. They had come here for glory. For honor. For the preservation of the old ways. But they had also come here to survive. 20 seconds. The old ways had failed. That was the truth Greckener did not want to accept. The Council had fallen because it deserved to fall. And throwing away 8,000 ships would not change that reality. 10 seconds. Fleet-wide retreat, Greckener ordered. Maximum burn. Get us out of range. His crew hesitated. Now, Greckener roared. The hardliner fleet turned and fled. Behind them, the human ships held their positions. They did not pursue, did not fire. simply watched the retreat with silent vigilance. Victoria allowed herself to exhale. Stand down from combat alert. Maintain defensive positions. Commander Phillips looked at her. You would have fired, yes. The crews on those ships knew it was potentially a suicide mission. They volunteered anyway, Victoria said quietly. 43,000 people willing to die to protect Earth. That is what makes us dangerous, Commander. Our willingness to sacrifice everything for each other? Word of the hardliner retreat spread rapidly across the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was not bluffing. They had the weapons. They had the will. And they would use both if pushed. The last opposition to the New Order collapsed within hours. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of something new was beginning. Unity. Prime Station hosted the first session of the reformed Galactic Council 3 days after the hardliner retreat. The chamber looked different now. Workers had removed the elevated platforms that gave senior delegates positions of superiority. New seats had been installed at a uniform level. Every species sat as equals. Ambassador Marcus Webb represented humanity alongside Director Victoria Cross. They sat among delegates from 300 different civilizations. Watching High Arbiter Thelvin call the session to order, Council recognizes that we gather under transformed circumstances, Thelvin began. The High Arbiter's crystalline form glowed with neutral silver light. The old hierarchies have fallen. The old assumptions have been proven false. We must now determine what rises in their place. Marcus stood. Around him, delegates from dozens of species watched with varying degrees of hostility, curiosity, and hope. The human delegation proposes the Covenant of Sovereign Species, Marcus announced. His voice carried clearly through the translation systems. Every civilization, regardless of age or military strength, receives equal representation. Decisions are made by consensus when possible. By a supermajority vote when consensus cannot be achieved, no species can be quarantined or restricted without evidence of direct threat to others. Delegate Zivkor rose. The insectoid had survived the political purges that followed the failed hardliner attack. Who determines what constitutes a direct threat? Who enforces these new rules? Victoria stood to answer. A joint security force composed of ships from every member species. No single faction controls it. Decisions to deploy it require approval from 75% of member states. Authority is distributed. Power is shared. You describe a complete restructuring of galactic governance, Thelvin observed. Yes, Marcus agreed. Because the old structure failed. It failed the client species you oppressed. It failed the minor civilizations you ignored. And it almost failed humanity when you decided we were expendable. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates nodded agreement. Others looked angry at the accusations. B. No one could deny the truth of Marcus's words. This covenant will be fragile, Thelvin warned. Maintaining consensus across hundreds of species will be nearly impossible. Democracy is supposed to be difficult, Marcus replied. It should be messy and frustrating and slow. Because when governance is easy, someone is being silenced. We will accept the chaos of freedom over the order of oppression. A new voice entered the discussion. The eldest of the Viridian Collective spoke through every communication system simultaneously. The ancient beings had remained silent during the crisis, watching humanity's revolution with great interest. The collective supports the human proposal, the eldest announced. We believe it represents the natural evolution of galactic society. The age of empire has ended. The age of cooperation begins. We will participate in this new covenant as equals, not as founders. The Viridian Declaration changed everything. If the galaxy's oldest and most advanced species endorsed the reforms, opposition became pointless. One by one, delegates began signaling their support. Not all of them. Some withdrew entirely, retreating to isolationist positions in distant systems. Others abstained, waiting to see if the new system would function. But a clear majority endorsed the covenant. Thelvin's form shifted through colors, suggesting deep emotion. Then let it be recorded. The Galactic Council, as it existed for 10,000 years, is dissolved. The Covenant of Sovereign Species is established in its place. The vote was formalized through electronic consensus. The old order ended not with violence, but with agreement. After the session, Marcus stood at an observation window watching alien ships dock with the station. Vessels from 100 different species, coming together to begin the hard work of building something new. Victoria joined him. "Did you ever think we would actually reach this point?" "Honestly, I gave it even odds," Marcus admitted. "We prepared for war. But I always hoped we could avoid it. We did not completely avoid it. The hardliner fleet almost forced a battle. But they retreated without firing a shot," Marcus countered. "We showed our strength without using it. That is the closest thing to a perfect victory we could hope for." Victoria nodded toward the viewport where a human cargo ship was docking next to a Viridian consciousness vessel. "Think it will last? This peace we have built?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "There will be conflicts, border disputes, trade disagreements, maybe even small wars between individual species. But we have established something important. The idea that problems should be solved without genocide, that disagreement does not require destruction. That is the foundation. Whether future generations build on it or tear it down depends on them." Very philosophical for a diplomat. "I have earned some philosophy after these past months," Marcus said with a slight smile. Below them on the commercial levels, the first human-crith restaurant was preparing to open. Mixed species crews were working together on station repairs. In the diplomatic chambers, representatives argued about tariff rates and environmental standards. Normal politics. Boring politics. It was beautiful. Victoria checked her datapad. "I need to return to Earth. The transition teams are arriving tomorrow. Someone needs to coordinate the integration protocols." "I will remain here," Marcus said. "Someone needs to make sure the delegates actually implement these reforms instead of just talking about them." "Good luck with that. Good luck with your end." Integrating council bureaucracy with human systems will be its own special challenge. They shook hands formally. Then Victoria headed toward the docking bays, while Marcus returned to the diplomatic levels. The real work was just beginning. Over the following months, the Covenant of Sovereign Species slowly took shape. Administrative structures were built. Dispute resolution protocols were established. The Joint Security Force was assembled from volunteer ships contributed by member species. Not everything went smoothly. There were arguments about resource allocation, debates about jurisdiction, accusations of favoritism and corruption. Some species withdrew from the Covenant entirely, preferring isolation to cooperation, but slowly, steadily. The new system began to function. Trade flourished without the old monopolies. Minor species gained representation they had never possessed. Scientific cooperation accelerated as knowledge. Sharing became the norm rather than a carefully controlled privilege. The galaxy was changing. 1 year after the reforms, Marcus stood in the same observation room at Unity Prime. Thelvin joined him. The High Arbiter's form glowing with warm amber light.
"I wanted to thank you, Thelvin,"
said Marcus, looked surprised. "For what?" "For not destroying us completely. You had the power. You had the justification. But you offered partnership instead of conquest. Not every species would have made that choice." "We learned from our own history," Marcus replied. "On Earth, empires rose and fell for thousands of years. Each one believed they would last forever. Each one eventually collapsed. We studied those failures and learned a critical lesson, which was that stability built on oppression is temporary. Real peace requires willing cooperation. You cannot force people to work together. You can only create conditions where cooperation benefits everyone." Thelvin pulsed thoughtfully. "The Council believed we had created those conditions." "Created conditions where cooperation was mandatory?" Marcus corrected. "That is different. People obeyed because they feared punishment, not because they saw mutual benefit. The moment someone strong enough to resist appeared, your system cracked. And you were that someone." "We were the catalyst," Marcus agreed. "But the cracks were already there. We simply exposed them." Below them, a new species was being welcomed into the Covenant. Young, recently spacefaring, aggressive in their diplomatic style, they reminded Marcus of humanity 2 centuries ago. "How will you handle them?" Thelvin asked. With patience, Marcus replied. In honesty. We will explain how things work now. Not how they used to work. How they should work. If they want to participate, we welcome them. If they want to fight, we defend ourselves. But we give them the choice. That is the difference. The new species delegation was escorted into the council chamber. Marcus prepared to greet them. To begin the slow process of integration that had become his specialty, the galaxy was still dangerous. Still chaotic. Still full of species who disagreed about fundamental questions of governance and morality, but it was also more free than it had been in 10,000 years, and that freedom, Marcus believed, was worth protecting. 20 years after the Reformation, the Covenant of Sovereign Species had evolved into something no one had predicted. Unity Prime Station had expanded dramatically, ringed now by dozens of additional habitation modules and commercial districts. Over 500 species participated actively in the Covenant, with another 200 maintaining observer status. Ambassador Marcus Webb, now serving as the Covenant's first advocate for new species integration, stood in the arrival bay, watching a new delegation approach. The species called themselves the Corvath. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 6 months ago. Their ships were crude but functional. Their weapons were powerful but unrefined. They reminded Marcus of humanity's early days in galactic society. The Corvath ambassador was a large, reptilian being with silver scales and eyes that suggested high intelligence. He moved with the cautious aggression of a predator, uncertain of its surroundings. I am Ambassador Marcus Webb, Marcus greeted in the Corvath language, using a translation device that had been prepared specifically for this meeting. Welcome to Unity Prime. Welcome to the Covenant. The Corvath ambassador studied Marcus carefully. I am Kelvar. We have heard stories about this place, about how the humans destroyed the old council and created something new. It's not destroyed, Marcus corrected gently. Reformed? There is a difference. We did not tear down galactic civilization. We changed it into something better. You were threatened with extinction, Kelvar said bluntly. You responded with overwhelming force. That is what our intelligence suggests. Your intelligence is partially correct, Marcus acknowledged. We were threatened. We did respond with force. But we also offered peace, partnership, a chance to build something together rather than simply dominating each other. Kelvar's expression suggested skepticism. Words are easy. The Corvath believe in actions. We have come here armed. We will not be pushed around by species who have been spacefaring for centuries while we are newcomers. Marcus smiled. It was the same attitude humanity had possessed too. Centuries ago, defensive, aggressive, certain that everyone else in the galaxy was a potential threat. Good, Marcus said. I would be disappointed if you arrived unarmed. Strength is important, but so is wisdom. Knowing when to use strength and when to offer cooperation? That is what separates successful species from extinct ones. He gestured toward the corridors leading deeper into the station. Come, let me show you how things work here. Not how they used to work under the old council. How they work now, as they walked, Marcus explained the Covenant's structure. The equal representation. The consensus-based decision-making. The joint security force that no single species controlled. Kelvar listened carefully, asking sharp questions that suggested a keen strategic mind. This system seems fragile, Kelvar observed. What prevents powerful species from simply taking what they want? Mutual benefit. Fit, Marcus replied. Under the old council, power was concentrated. A few species controlled everything. Everyone else obeyed or faced military action. But that system required constant enforcement, constant surveillance, constant threat. He led Kelvar to an observation window overlooking the commercial district. Look at this. Hundreds of species trading freely, sharing technology, cooperating on scientific research. They do this not because someone forces them. They do it because it benefits everyone involved. But what if a species refuses to cooperate? What if they become aggressive? Then the Joint Security Force responds, Marcus explained. But the decision to deploy requires 75% approval from member species. No single faction can use the Force for their own agenda. Power is distributed. Abuse becomes much harder.
Alvar?
Watch the activity below. Cargo ships from a dozen different civilizations docking and departing. Crews mixing freely. Trade happening without obvious military oversight. The Corvath have enemies, Kelvar said quietly. Species who want our resources, our territory. Under your covenant, how are we protected? By joining, Marcus replied. Member species enjoy mutual defense agreements. Attack one, and you attack all. Your enemies would face not just Corvath ships, but vessels from hundreds of allied species. The cost becomes prohibitive. And what does membership cost us? Participation, Marcus said simply. You send representatives to council sessions. You contribute ships to the Joint Security Force proportional to your fleet size. You agree to resolve disputes through arbitration before resorting to military action. You open your space to peaceful trade with other member species. That sounds like we give up sovereignty. Give up the right to conquer your neighbors without consequence, Marcus corrected. You retain sovereignty over your internal affairs, your government, your culture, your laws. The covenant does not dictate how species govern themselves. We only regulate how they interact with each other. Kelvar considered this carefully. What if the Corvath refuse to join? What if we prefer independence? Then you remain independent, Marcus said. We do not force membership. But understand that non-member species do not receive covenant protection. If your enemies attack, we will not intervene. You face them alone? That seems like coercion. It seems like reality, Marcus countered. The galaxy is dangerous. Always has been. The covenant offers collective security. But it is an offer, not a demand. You choose whether to accept. They continued walking through the station. Kelvar observed everything with sharp attention. The mixed species crews. The open trade. The absence of visible military presence, despite the thousands of ships docked at the station. Why are you doing this? Kelvar asked suddenly. Humanity could dominate the galaxy. Your fleet is the largest. Your technology is advanced. Why share power? Marcus stopped walking. He turned to face Kelvar directly. Because domination is temporary, he said. Humanity learned this lesson through blood and fire over thousands of years of our own history. Every empire eventually falls. Every tyrant eventually dies. Power built on fear and subjugation cannot last. But power built on mutual benefit, on willing cooperation, that endures. We share power because it makes us stronger, because allies are more valuable than subjects, because we want a galaxy where humanity can thrive for millennia, not just decades. Kelvar studied Marcus for a long moment. You believe this? I can see it in your eyes. I do, Marcus confirmed. And I hope you will give the covenant a chance. Join us for a trial period. See how it works. If after 1 year you decide it is not for you, you can withdraw. No penalty. No punishment. Why offer such favorable terms? Because I remember when humanity was where you are now, Marcus said quietly. New to galactic society, uncertain who to trust. Defensive about our sovereignty, the old council treated us as inferiors. Tried to dictate our development. Almost destroyed us for refusing to submit. We learned from that experience. We built the covenant specifically to welcome species like yours. To give you a voice instead of demanding obedience. To offer partnership instead of subjugation. Kelvar was silent for a long moment. Then he made a gesture that Marcus's translation device indicated was agreement. The Corvath will join your covenant, Kelvar decided. For a trial period, 1 year. We will see if your words match your actions, Marcus smiled. That is all I ask. Welcome, Ambassador Kelvar. Welcome to the future. Over the following months, the Corvath integrated into Covenant society. Not without difficulties. There were cultural misunderstandings, trade disputes, arguments about resource rights, but the Covenant's arbitration system handled each conflict systematically. The Korvath delegates learned that their voice mattered, that their concerns were heard, that they were treated as equals despite being newcomers. And when their enemies attempted to raid Korvath territory, expecting easy prey, they found Joint Security Force vessels waiting. Ships from 17 different species, unified in defense of a Covenant member. The raid was repelled without a single shot fired. The mere presence of the unified fleet was enough. After 1 year, the Korvath requested permanent membership status. Marcus attended the ceremony where Kelvar formally signed the Covenant documents. Afterward, they shared a meal in one of the station's multi-species restaurants. "I was wrong about many things," Kelvar admitted. "I thought strength meant standing alone, that cooperation was weakness." "A common misconception," Marcus replied. "One that humanity shared once." "What changed your minds?" Marcus thought about that question. About the centuries of preparation, the moment when Earth faced the Council's judgment, the decision to build something new instead of simply destroying the old. "We realized that survival was not enough," Marcus said finally. "We wanted to thrive, to grow, to be part of something larger than ourselves. And that required changing how we thought about power." "Korvath are learning the same lesson," Kelvar said. "It is harder than I expected, but valuable." 20 years after the Covenant's formation, over 500 species participated actively. Dozens of regional councils handled local disputes. Joint scientific missions explored unknown regions of space. Trade flourished across thousands of systems. The galaxy had not become peaceful. There were still conflicts. Still wars between species outside the Covenant. Still crime and corruption and all the problems that came with intelligent beings living together. But it was better. Measurably better. Marcus stood in his office at Unity Prime, reviewing reports from across Covenant space. New species were requesting membership every month. Economic growth was accelerating. Scientific breakthroughs were happening at unprecedented rates. His assistant entered with a message. "Ambassador, there is a situation developing in the outer territories. A new species has been contacted. They are aggressive, well-armed, refusing initial diplomatic overtures." Marcus smiled slightly. "Send me the briefing. I will review it and determine our approach." "Yes, sir." After his assistant left, Marcus pulled up the data on the new species. They were called the Dexarone. Recently spacefaring, powerful, defensive, just like humanity had been, just like the Korvath had been, just like dozens of other species who now thrived as Covenant members. Marcus began drafting his approach strategy. He would offer them the same chance humanity had offered the Korvath, the same chance the Covenant had offered humanity after they had forced the galaxy to change. Partnership, cooperation, a voice in their own future. Some would accept. Others would refuse. But the offer would be made, again and again. To every species that reached the stars, because that was what the Covenant represented. Not dominance, not conquest. Hope, the hope that intelligent beings could work together, could solve problems through cooperation instead of violence, could build something greater than any single species could achieve alone. It was a fragile hope, maintained through constant effort, requiring vigilance and patience and endless compromise. But it was real, and it was spreading across the galaxy. Species were learning a new way, not the old Council's way of hierarchy and control, not humanity's way of overwhelming preparation and strategic dominance. A third way, the Covenant's way: equal voices, shared power, mutual benefit. It was messy. It was complicated. It was frustrating. It was also the future. Marcus sent his initial contact proposal to the Dexarone. He expected rejection, expected hostility, expected the same defensive aggression every new species displayed. But he would keep trying, keep offering, keep building, because 20 years ago, humanity had arrived to obliterate the Galactic Empire, and instead, they had built something. Better, something worth protecting, something worth believing in. The galaxy had realized too late that humanity could not be stopped. But it had realized just in time that humanity did not need to be. They just needed to be heard. And now, finally, everyone was listening. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5